So, good morning. I just fixed myself a cup of coffee and getting ready to take our next step on preparing our sourdough for baking some bread. You can see here I've got a bowl I'm going to put this in, but I want to show you, before we get that far, what happened overnight with our sourdough. So here's our sourdough. I left it sitting out on the counter last night, like I said, about 70 degrees, and you'll notice even though it wasn't full last night, it got full overnight and it bubbled up and over. So that's a good indication that the sourdough is working. So I'm just gonna carefully open this up here. And you know what? This is no big deal. It's on the counter. A little mess. We'll mop that up. It's nice to know that it's working. But I don't know if you can see this here. Look at these bubbles. That is exactly what you want. So even though this sourdough has been sitting in the refrigerator without being fed for a month, just warming up, adding a little fresh food to it, it's taken off like you wouldn't believe. And again, just flour and water. There's no whey in there. There's no sourdough starter in there. There's nothing. Just flour and water. And that's all you need. So we're just going to pour this in here. Now I'm not going to completely clean this jar out. I want some to stay in there, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little more flour and water to this here, stick it back in the fridge, and it'll be ready for me next time. So what are we going to do with this here? I'm going to go get some more rye flour. So what we're doing here is we're building the starter, building the sourdough, so that there's enough sourdough there to really flavor the bread. And if you wanted to, this sourdough would also raise the bread. It goes a little slower. A sourdough raise is slower, but it certainly will raise. And you could do nothing but the sourdough to raise. Now, I usually will supplement it with some commercial yeast, just because I don't necessarily want to wait around for the sourdough to do its thing. It can take several hours longer than it does with commercial yeast, and I don't believe the commercial yeast changes the flavor one bit. Now, if you do sourdough rise, complete sourdough rise, your bread is going to be a little bit more sour. But that's kind of why we're building this up right now into more, a larger volume of sourdough, so that we get plenty of that sourdough flavor. And I don't like my sourdough bread to be just super sour like what you have with a San Francisco sourdough. I just think that's over the top, unnecessary, and there's only a very limited number of things that I would eat a San Francisco sourdough with, because it's just too sour. I want this bread to be an everyday bread, something that I consume usually for breakfast and lunch every day. So I want it to be a bread that's adaptable to all sorts of things, whether I want to put a slab of cheese or ham or smoked sausage on it, or butter and jam, or toast it and eat it with eggs. You can do all of that with this bread, and it's going to have a sour profile to it, but it's not going to be a slap in the face sourdough. And this is the kind of sour dough that you find when you go to Europe, whether it's in Germany, Ukraine, Eastern Europe, anywhere. You don't find a sourdough that is as sour as what we consider to be sourdough from San Francisco. It's usually more of a mild sourdough. Now, here you can see this is kind of a, looks a little raggedy. That's fine. I could even really add more sourdough or more flour to this and make an even larger sourdough. I could add more water to this if I really wanted to build this up even more. And maybe I will. Maybe I'll add a little more water to this and a little more flour. Again, just tap water, room temperature. Again, if I didn't have rye flour, I could use wheat flour. This doesn't have to look pretty. All you're doing is basically inoculating this flour with the sourdough culture and letting it do its thing. Later on, when we make the dough for our bread, if we need to add more water, we can do that. We'll certainly add more flour. We just want to kind of get things going here. Give this sourdough time to reproduce. Get more flavor profile into this. Now, one thing, and really folks, don't be afraid of this because there's not a whole lot you can do wrong with this. So adaptable of a recipe, and our grandparents did this all the time with no formal baking education. Really, this is a process that anybody can do. It's not mysterious. There's not some secret art to it. But one thing you do not want to do at this point in time is add salt to this. Salt tends to inhibit yeast, and inhibiting yeast is not what we want right now. We want this yeast to do its thing here. And so all I'm going to do now is I'm going to loosely cover this. I'm not going to seal that down. I'm just going to loosely cover it and leave it here on the counter. And during the course of the day here, I'll check on it a couple times. It'll be expanding. It'll be getting that sour and that smell. And I wish you could smell this here because this has a this has the smell that you're looking for. It's sour and effervescent, and so that's an indication that everything's going right. If I was to taste it right now, which I have, again, a little sour and bubbly, and that's exactly what we want. So we're going to leave this here on the counter. During the course of the day, it's 70 degrees here in the house. Sometime by this late afternoon or early evening, this will be ready to go. Now, if I didn't want to bake this bread today, I wouldn't have to. I could put this in the fridge. Those cold temperatures would slow it down, and I could take it out of the fridge and do this tomorrow. So it's adaptable. I could leave it out here part of the day, then put it in the fridge. I could put it in the fridge now and take it out tonight. So it's pretty adaptable. You do have to have some time set aside to do this, but it's not time that you have to be here constantly. So, but I'm hoping by this evening, at the latest anyway, I'll find some time to do the baking, and we'll open this up. It'll be big, it'll be puffy, sour, and we'll put it in the mixer and go ahead with the bread. So we'll see you then.